Welcome to the Sound and Healing Podcast, where life is experienced, sound is celebrated, and healing is inevitable. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to the Sound and the Healing. I am so excited to have Rohini Kaniganti back in the house. I've missed you so, Ro. Welcome back.
Thank you, love. It's really good to be back. You and I have been on just some pretty intense adventures of caring for family members.
That is for sure. Yes. Well, and even before the last couple months, I know prior to that, you were doing even more in terms of family members. I think if I remember correctly, you were in India and all sorts of stuff. I'm sure our listeners would love to hear kind of anything you want to share about your travels in the last few months and what's been going on with you.
Oh my goodness. There's always so much narrative, right? If we get started. And so I'm just checking in this present moment that the main journey I've been on is taking care of my 22-year-old wonderful daughter, Sita, who had to have corrective surgeries on her hips. So this isn't congenital hip dysplasia, but it appears to be hip dysplasia that she developed maybe when she was 12 years old. And what they do is that they go in, and her ball and socket joint are related in a very shallow way. And so they cut apart the pelvic bone and they refashion the the socket so that it's much more a home for that ball. And they're going to do that in October on the right side. And she's gone back to Germany where she's in school and she's on crutches, but it's been pretty much, care for her every day. Really profound piece of this. I mean, just so much that came through. Because at the surface, things are this way. In the last podcast, you said, okay, my mother got ill and I took care of her, and then she passed away. And this is how I felt afterwards. There is those waves of narrative that we can relate to at this level. And deeper still, there are interconnections that start to become very obvious. For instance, if in fact she started to develop this for some reason, we discovered it because she's such an incredible athlete. Many people who have it don't realize it, and I suspect that all of the premature hip replacements, in people in their 50s and 60s that we're seeing are because of undiscovered hip dysplasias that happened. Seems mostly in women, but also in men.
Can I interrupt you for a second, love?
Yeah.
So can I ask you a question about the term hip dysplasia? Can you
Yeah.
explain that a little bit to me, who's a very much a layperson in terms of medical terms and so forth?
Yeah. Usually these are found in babies who, every baby gets tested um, to see if there's a click in their hips when they're born with a particular maneuver. And we tested Sita and there was no click. It seemed like everything was okay. And that often found, right, is congenital. It really means that the ball and the socket that the ball doesn't have a very deep home to belong in, that the socket is overly shallow. So then she developed that, the surgeon thinks, when she's 12 years old, when I looked at that, at the mechanism of that repair, I said, my goodness, it's a form of reattachment. And if I look at what happened in her life when she was around that age, my spouse and I separated.
Wow.
And talk about reattachment,
Yeah.
right? Now, where she was doted upon by her parents who love each other at this point. We loved each other then, but it was a very big thing for her. So, there's so many layers at which we can see how energy flows and how it manifests. And the deeper we get into that viewing, the more mysterious and amazing it is.
Well, and I'm struck by, as you said, the different layers. It permeates through all of it, you know. And so we may not understand in any given moment all of the ramifications of each layer. And it sounds like you're in the process and in the place in your life where you've really kind of can understand where it's permeating in all layers.
Right, right. The whole process was I don't want to put people to sleep by describing the many twists and turns in this extraordinary process. But one of the things that I think I can really share, which was so profound, was that early in that surgery, so it wasn't just one surgery, she actually ended up having four surgeries, but that's a whole other story. And you might have to pay for that story. But I found myself, I found myself in a space of wanting to blame others, myself, doctors, and it's as if a current of energy, of awareness came up inside me, and I said, in order to really be present, I need to have an amplified, alert awareness. And it felt like a movement upward and outward, like my body was bigger than it was. And that was remarkable because when I could inhabit a more alert presence, everything appeared different, and I could see things that I could not see before, and I could access a level of gratitude that I could not before, and I could see how everything was unfolding in its perfection. As painful as things were, as scary at times, right? As potentially full of loss as there were at times, given some complications we encountered, it helped me to navigate this with so much love. And so it's not the things in and of themselves that I've encountered in the last several months. It's how they allowed me to get deeper and more open.
I'd like to ask kind of a follow-up question in terms of the blame that you spoke of. You noticed that blame was coming up for you. Do you feel like then you went into talking about an expanded energy? Did you feel like that blame was taking you to that expanded energy? Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Thank you. No, that's really helpful. Um, I noticed the witness within, right? The witness that we speak about in meditation or mindfulness. The witness within noticed my desire to project my feelings onto others. And it was as if that witness then, let me just take a moment. What really happened inside so that I can unpack this? That awareness automatically caused me to lean back and from that blame and that projection and that, cause effect of a narrative that we're so addicted to, right? Because it helps us feel safe. I mean, some people call that, the matrix or the third dimension. I'll just call it the personal self, the conditioned mind, right? And here, nothing wrong with the personal self, would never want to diminish its beauty and its power, and that how we're here to really learn through it, right? And that it's really, we're here on a sensory vacation. But when the narrative around this sensory vacation called life can pause for a moment in silence, the witness can see a larger view of what's going on. And that seeing, that awareness itself has a life of its own and has a desire to get bigger. What's bigger than this current situation? How can I truly be of service? Right? The I that is bigger than the personal I. Some people might refer to it as a higher self or an innate healing intelligence, as we speak about it in psychedelic circles, or others, right? I mean, this inner healer, and that I think many people can speak of. But that inner that inner healer is activated through witnessing. And when we empower the witness, as in we don't blow past it, but we linger and lean back into it and away from the life circumstance that's in front of us, there is an enlarging energy. And at that moment, this is the still small voice that Mahatma Gandhi talks about, except it wasn't a small voice. I wasn't hallucinating. I'm not psychotic. It wasn't a voice in that I was listening to a voice. It was an awareness of, let me get really alert and bigger than the circumstance. That's the best way I can describe it, Claire. And wow, I could see the miracles unfolding because I could see how the assumptions that I had made about why something was happening. For instance, I'll just describe, she developed a gigantic blood clot. And the blaming was, oh, why did this happen? Da, 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 da. What did I do wrong? What did they do wrong? They didn't prepare. It wasn't any of that. In fact, I saw that this was exactly what was supposed to happen. So something that about her anatomy called a May-Thurner syndrome got uncovered at a perfect place, because in many women, it's uncovered when they're pregnant. And imagine that that's a pretty difficult place for it to be revealed. Well, once it was revealed, she got placed on blood thinners. It's not fun to be on blood thinners, right? But she is. And then she now has a stent placed. And we could see how so many issues that she'd had in her life came from that unseen inner syndrome, which got revealed. And so this is the one of the miracles that happens when we're able to inhabit an alert presence, right? There's many different kinds of presence. There's a soft, sort of gentle presence, and in this case, I inhabited an alert, aware presence that we can see patterns of unfolding, quote unquote, revelation, right? Not in a biblical sense, but things revealing themselves that we could not see when the programmed cognition got really busy with a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't want to make narratives wrong, right? They're a developmental stage. They're necessary to have a sense of self. And we can't have a no self before we develop a strong sense of self. So I honor all that myself is, right? My personal self is. So I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Well, thank goodness. I'm just so excited to have you back. Well, and it's fascinating while you were talking about that witness, that presence. I could so relate because as I was caring for mom and as things would present, and it's amazing. I keep coming back to we each have a committee inside of us, right? There's so many different parts of us. And when you're able to access that witness, when you're able to open up to that alert self, that expansive self, it's amazing what you're able to hold
Right.
and allow and integrate.
And integrate. And really, it's interesting that that witness requires comfort with inner stillness. And I think we've talked about, or I may have mentioned in the past, how we can access stillness even through breath, that the end of one breath and the beginning, between the end of one breath and the beginning of the next, there is a moment of stillness we can drop in. And then the next breath will drop in deeper. And it's a way to get familiar with that incredible stillness within. And if we really wanted to get curious, right, if we think about who we really are, we come down to at a cellular level at each organ in our body. We come down to the cells of the body, what's in each cell, and you come down to a nucleus, and then around that nucleus, right? I mean, it's not I'm not talking about the body cell, deeper than the body cells are the molecules that create that body cell. And then deeper than the molecule are these atoms in interaction. I mean, this is who we are, right? And then you look at the atomic level, that there is a nucleus, and around the nucleus, in an indescribable amount of space, are orbiting electrons. So if we look at it from a molecular level, we are mostly space. So when we are dropping into stillness, we're actually dropping into what we already are, which is mostly space, even though we look like we're mostly solid. It's so important to become aware of the stillness. I mean, we speak, you and I, of sound, and there's a place where the sound stops, and we can get, many people, for instance, have a meditation bowl. You can play the meditation, strike the meditation bowl, follow the sound, and then at some point it becomes so soft you don't hear it, and there's stillness. Now, if we can access even a moment of stillness in the midst of much happening, we can access the witness.
It's fascinating what brings up for me as you're talking about it. Same premise, I think. But the word that just, I love this word, is still point. And for me, for me to access that still point, I like to just kind of take a very slow inhale, and I can feel my body and my energetic body just kind of expand. And it's just such a blissful feeling for me that yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to have access to. And the other thing that was evoked as you were talking about stillness, and as we're getting into this, is that an audible example when I've been to maybe a concert or a theater performance or a dance performance, and after the performance has ended, when it's really good and everybody's really into it, and you can just feel the awe and the gratefulness and the thankfulness after it's finished, where there's that silence before an audience starts to clap. So powerful, right? So yeah, those moments that you can just feel that power of that.
Yeah, there's this delicious silence here now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So delicious that it's hard to want to talk in it.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
This feels like a really beautiful, beautiful place.
Thanks so very much for listening to our podcast. We hope you enjoyed yourself and will share the sound and the healing with your friends. Please go to our website with any questions or comments you may have, as we plan on using your questions in upcoming episodes. Our website and socials are included at the bottom of our episode descriptions, so please join us to continue the discussion. Until next time, keep on sounding and healing.